This morning, we've been digging into the new polling from NBC News that shows President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump deadlocked in a hypothetical 2024 election matchup. Voters also have concerns about the current president's age and mental fitness. For the numbers, let's bring in NBC News national political correspondent Steve Kornacki at the big board. Steve, dig into these numbers.
Yes, some interesting findings here, Mika. I mean, a couple headlines here. On the Republican side, first of all, here is where the Republican race stands in our poll. Nationally, at least, Donald Trump with an enormous lead over his nearest competitor, Ron DeSantis, a 43-point gap there between Trump now at 59%, DeSantis at 16%, everybody else in single digits. This movement has been steady and consistent for months now for Trump. If you went all the way back to our poll in April, Trump's lead over DeSantis at that point was just 15 points. DeSantis was over 30%. DeSantis' support has come down basically in half since then, and Trump's lead has basically tripled since April. And again, the context here, there have been indictments since April. There was that first Republican debate that Donald Trump skipped. There were a lot of events, a lot of things happened that rival Republican campaigns and candidates were counting on to make this race tighter. Instead, it's going in the exact opposite direction with another debate on the Republican side looming in just a couple days, another debate that Donald Trump is going to be skipping, it appears. So that's the Republican side of things. And if Republicans do indeed go forward and nominate the former president for a rematch with the current president, we find Biden and Trump tied 46-46 in this poll. There have been several other polls out recently from other organizations that show a similar result here, a Biden-Trump neck-and-neck race. The significance of this, I would say, is just if you look back to 2020 and really the year leading into the 2020 election, this is not what national polling between Biden and Trump looked like. We had 11 NBC News polls, 11 between the fall of 2019 and the eve of the election in 2020, matching Joe Biden against Donald Trump. And I can tell you, Biden led every single one of them, never by fewer than 6 points and by as many as 11 points. And in every reputable national polling average from the fall of 2019 until Election Day 2020, Joe Biden led the entire way in matchups against Donald Trump. So this is not to say that Donald Trump is the favorite to win. This is a tied race in this national poll here. It's just to say that the dynamic between the two of them at this point seems to be a little bit different than it was 4 years ago, at least what's appearing in the poll, in our poll and in other polls. And again, this coming after multiple indictments of Donald Trump. We wondered what effect that would have on his standing against Biden. It does not seem, at least in our polling right now, certainly, that it's knocked Trump out. This is a dead even race in our polling here. A big thing that's driving this is what's different from 2020. Joe Biden's the incumbent president now, not Donald Trump. And it's Joe Biden who's sitting there with a 41% approval rating in our poll, 56% disapprove, 56, the highest disapprove mark Biden has racked up in our polling. Big cause of that is the economy. When Biden took office, basically a couple months in, the country was right down the middle on whether they were satisfied or dissatisfied with the state of the economy. Now, barely a quarter of voters say they are satisfied with the state of the economy. So low approval rating, low satisfaction with where the economy is. And then there's also this. We've talked plenty, again, about Donald Trump, about the indictments, about the looming trials, about all of the legal issues, about January 6th, and a majority there, a sizable majority, 62%, almost 2 out of 3 voters say that is a major or moderate concern to them as they think about the 2024 election. But look what's 12 points higher. Joe Biden's age and fitness for office. Nearly 3 out of 4 voters say that is a major or moderate concern. Joe Biden is 80 years old. Donald Trump turned 77 this summer. But the number for Trump in terms of concern about age and fitness is 27 points lower than it is for Biden. And again, that number for Biden higher than we were seeing. Concern about age higher than we were seeing when he was a candidate in 2019 and 2020. And lastly, I can just show you, at least at this point, this is where Democrats have work to do. And if you're an optimistic Democrat, you'd say, well, we'll do this work. This is how we'll win the election. But but there is an enthusiasm gap that you're seeing in the polling right here. You ask folks on a scale of 1 to 10. How interested are you in the election? 9 and 10 being the highest. These are the percent who answered 9 or 10. 3/4 of Republicans, not quite 70% of Democrats. So there is a gap there. One of the areas where the gap is most pronounced, you see it among white voters. Nearly 3 out of 4 put themselves in that 9 or 10 category. Among non-white voters, it's barely half. Obviously, a big part of the Democratic coalition involves non-white voters, particularly African-American voters. And you see the gap there in terms of interest at this point. So you've seen Democrats start to talk about targeting black vote in particular, trying to get that black vote mobilized early in this campaign. We'll see if they're successful with that. But you can see that's a big portion there of the lag for Democrats right now in terms of interest in this election.
Yeah, and Reverend Al, let's bring in Reverend Al. Stay with us, Steve. Let's bring in Reverend Al right there. You know, this is something that we've heard about in 2020, as well as over the past several years. And there's sort of this enthusiasm gap among people of color. And yet in 2022, obviously, that vote held up for Democrats. But there seems to be a growing concern among Democratic activists you talk to and people inside the Biden campaign, and there's the same concern in 2020, that there's some fading of support from especially black men, Hispanic men. What do you think? What's driving that right now?
I think a lot of what is driving it, and we talked about it last week into the weekend at the Congressional Black Caucus meetings, is that, one, a lot of the things that were done that advanced the interests of the black community has not been messaged to those on the ground. I think that a lot of Beltway knowledge is not being translated on the ground. Black unemployment is the lowest it's ever been. But if people don't know that, then they will not rally around that. We're dealing with.
Why is that not getting through? How's the White House missing that? I mean, you know, if Donald. Yeah, go ahead.
Obviously, the messaging is not coming right. Their strategy of how they're getting messages out there and messengers with credibility is not there. And then the assault. I think, Joe, that the fact that they're not really talking about how we lost affirmative action, and they're actually going after states and companies that are dealing with DEI programs. I'm going to court tomorrow in Atlanta with 2 women that formed a group that called they formed a fund called the Fearless Fund, where they were actually giving money to upstart money to black women to start their businesses. They're being sued by the same people, Ed Blum, that did the affirmative action case. But the administration ought to be talking about this. You're stopping people from going into business when conservatives says that's what we ought to be doing. These are the kinds of things that I think fire people up, but they can't get fired up if you don't turn the burner on.